What if I told you that the moment your life finally begins is the moment you stop trying to control it? Not when you achieve more, not when they finally approve, but when you exhale and let go. Most people spend their lives gripping tight to things they were never meant to carry. A perfection, pressure, approval, identity. And yet it's only when we loosen that grip that everything begins to fall into place. This is not just a story. It's a journey through heartbreak and healing, silence and surrender, fear and finally freedom. 10 voices, 10 turning points, one message. You don't have to hold on so tight, because maybe letting go isn't that. Maybe it's the beginning. If that speaks to something deep in you, subscribe to this channel. There's something here you were meant to hear, and it might just change everything. The weight we don't realize we're carrying. Letting go starts with finally noticing what we've been holding onto all along. Samantha used to believe that if she could just plan well enough, work hard enough, and keep everyone happy, life would reward her with peace. She had the apartment with the skyline view, the six-figure job, the morning routines, and the color-coded calendar. People called her reliable. Her team called her a rock. She called herself strong. But there was one night that cracked all of that. It was a Wednesday, nothing unusual. She finished a late Zoom call, microwaved dinner, and checked tomorrow's agenda before collapsing into bed. But sleep wouldn't come. Instead, a tightness formed in her chest like a silent alarm. She couldn't explain it, only feel it. It wasn't panic, it wasn't even sadness. It was something older, something heavy. Something that had been sitting there for years, unnoticed. A silent kind of exhaustion, the kind that doesn't go away with rest. The next morning, she cried brushing her teeth, not because something went wrong, but because she suddenly saw how long she'd been holding it all together, and how alone she felt doing it. That's how it begins for many of us. Not with breakdowns, but with quiet moments of truth. Not with storms, but with the realization that we've been walking in rain for years, pretending it was just a drizzle. Samantha booked a last-minute trip to Sedona. She didn't call it a spiritual retreat. She told herself she just needed to unplug. But when she arrived, the desert air felt like an invitation she couldn't ignore. During one of the workshops, a guide asked her to list everything she was carrying mentally. Not her to-do list, her emotional backpack. She wrote down the fear of failing, the pressure to prove, the responsibility to be strong, the need to keep everyone calm, the guilt of saying no, the fear of being misunderstood, the pain of an old goodbye she never really processed. The list went on longer than she expected. The guide looked at her and said, "You don't look tired from work. You look tired from resisting." That sentence hit her deeper than anything had in years, because she realized she wasn't just tired from doing too much. She was tired from holding on too tight. To her role, to her image, to control, to certainty, to being liked, to being right, to being needed. We carry so much we don't realize, and most of it we were never meant to hold. Somewhere along the way, we mistake survival for identity. We carry burdens that aren't ours just to keep the peace. We perform strength even when we're breaking inside. We think letting go means failure, when in truth, it's how we finally breathe. You might not have had a breakdown in the mirror, but you felt it. The invisible weight, the pressure to hold it all, the fear of what will happen if you don't. But what if you put it down? Not forever, just for now. What if peace doesn't come when everything's fixed, but when you stop trying to fix everything at once? The next time you feel overwhelmed, try this. Pause, close your eyes. Inhale slowly. Exhale even slower. And ask yourself gently, what am I still gripping that's no longer serving me? This question is not a fix. It's a flashlight. It illuminates the truth you've been too busy to notice. That maybe the job isn't killing you, but your relationship to it is. That maybe the relationship isn't broken, but your boundaries are. That maybe you're not lost. You're just buried under 1,000 expectations that were never truly yours. Sometimes the most radical act of healing is not adding more, but subtracting, not doing more, but undoing. Because when you let go of what you were never meant to carry, you create space for what actually belongs to you. Samantha didn't quit her job or move to a mountain top. She just started doing something most people never do. She began checking in with herself daily, not with spreadsheets, but with silence. She began asking, what's mine to carry, and what's not? She unfollowed the people who made her feel less than. She started therapy. She allowed herself to say no. She stopped apologizing for resting. And slowly, the fog lifted, not all at once, but one breath at a time. Letting go isn't one big leap. It's 1,000 soft decisions. To stop abandoning yourself for the comfort of others. To stop confusing productivity with worth. To stop mistaking tension for strength. If you're reading this and feeling like something inside you is nodding, you're not alone. The weight you're carrying is real, but so is the freedom that comes when you decide to set it down. You don't have to let go of everything at once. You just need to start with one thing, one belief, one pressure, one expectation, one role you no longer want to play. And in doing so, you create room for a new way of being, a way that doesn't require you to earn rest, or apologize for feeling, or perform strength when softness is what you truly need. This is where the real journey begins, not by climbing higher, but by finally asking, what can I lay down today? And maybe when you do, everything, finally, falls into place. The illusion of control and how it slowly breaks us. Mark believed that control was love, that being in charge meant protecting the people he cared about, especially his daughter, Lily. After his wife passed away unexpectedly 5 years ago, Mark, now 46 and living in Portland, had one mission: make sure Lily never felt that kind of pain again. He became the planner, the protector, the provider. Everything had a schedule, every risk had a backup plan, and every emotion was quietly filed away under. Not now. He got up at 5, worked out at 6, made breakfast at 7. By the time Lily opened her eyes, their day had already been pre-written. He packed her lunch down to the exact nutritional content. He checked her homework like it was a contract. He even monitored her friendships politely but tightly. He was doing it all out of love, or at least that's what he told himself. But one Thursday night, something broke. Lily didn't come downstairs for dinner. He went up to her room and found her sitting on the floor, her hands gripping her knees, eyes swollen. She looked at him and said, quietly but clearly, "Dad, you're not helping me breathe. I feel like I'm suffocating." Those words pierced through him, sharper than any insult could. Because deep down he knew she was right. His need to control everything wasn't just stifling her, it was draining him. We often think control makes life safer. It feels like the grown-up thing to do. But what if control is really just fear in a better outfit? Fear of uncertainty, fear of loss, fear of not being good enough unless everything goes according to plan. The deeper truth is, control doesn't give you freedom, it gives you fear. The tighter you hold the sand, the faster it slips through your fingers. That's not just a metaphor, it's a pattern of exhaustion. Mark started noticing how control had crept into every area of his life. He didn't enjoy cooking anymore. He measured everything to perfection. He didn't talk with his friends, he reported to them. He didn't parent from love, he managed from fear. The more he tried to prevent life from hurting, the more he missed life itself. He wasn't holding his daughter, he was holding a blueprint of who he thought she should be. And she felt it. They both did. In Buddhism, there's a word, non-attachment. It doesn't mean detachment. It means letting life move without chaining it to your expectations. It means not owning moments, but experiencing them. Control wants ownership. But presence wants connection, and only one of those leads to peace. Mark didn't transform overnight, but he started with small shifts. He let Lily choose her own outfit, even if it didn't match. He didn't double-check her homework every night. He asked more open-ended questions. Not did you finish your tasks, but how are you feeling today? And something shifted, not just in Lily, but in him. He realized he hadn't cried in years, not because he didn't feel, but because he feared what would happen if he opened the floodgate. He started journaling not to track progress, but to release pressure. He went on long walks without his phone. At first, it felt wrong. Then it started to feel real. Letting go didn't mean neglect. It meant trust, trusting that Lily could grow without constant supervision. Trusting that some messes are part of the masterpiece. Trusting that love doesn't mean micromanaging someone's journey. It means walking beside them, even when they wander. We don't realize how much energy we waste trying to control things that were never ours to control. Other people's opinions, the future, the past, even our own emotions. And yet the moment we stop clenching, we start living. Try this. The next time you feel yourself tightening, emotionally, mentally, physically, pause and ask, what am I trying to control right now? Then follow it with, what would happen if I did? The answer usually isn't danger, it's discomfort. And discomfort is often just an invitation into growth. Mark now lives with less noise in his head and more music in his home. He doesn't measure Lily's worth by her grades or his own by productivity. He tells her he's proud not because she's perfect, but because she's real. And slowly, that same message began echoing back to him. Control is seductive because it pretends to be strength. But the strongest people you'll ever meet are the ones who have learned to live with open hands. Who have let go of needing everything to be just right and chosen instead to be fully here, no matter how uncertain, messy, or beautiful the moment is. If you're tired, not just physically, but soul-tired, it might not be from doing too much. It might be from gripping too tight. Letting go doesn't mean life falls apart. It means you finally stop holding it back. And that's when everything, maybe for the first time, starts to fall into place. Letting go isn't weakness, it's a return to wholeness. Maya had built her identity on the art of holding it all together. Founder, CEO, mother, wife, daughter, board member, keynote speaker. Her inbox was a battlefield, her calendar a war zone, her smile a performance perfected over years. From the outside, she was thriving. A tech company in San Francisco with $1 billion valuation, panels at TED, accolades from Forbes. But inside, something had been quietly unraveling, not because she failed, but because she forgot how to breathe. It wasn't one dramatic collapse. It was the slow erosion of joy, of rest, of self. The ache in her shoulders, the numbness in her laugh, the way she stared at the ceiling at 2 a.m. and whispered, "Oh, is this it?" She once believed strength meant being unshakable. That surrender was for the weak. That pausing meant losing the race. But one afternoon, during a strategy meeting she had scheduled between 2 investor calls, something inside her snapped. Not loudly, quietly. Her hand began to tremble, holding her coffee. Her mind blanked. She couldn't remember the agenda she had memorized. The room didn't spin, it just faded. And so did she. They called it burnout. She called it a reckoning. For the first time in her life, Maya stepped away. Not to run, but to return to herself. At first, the silence felt unbearable. Without the noise, who was she? Without the title, the work, the hustle, what remained? She rented a small cabin by the cliffs of Big Sur. No Wi-Fi, no meetings. No mirrors. Only ocean, breath, and the slow remembering of what it means to exist without needing to prove. One morning, she stood barefoot at the edge of the cliff. The Pacific wind wrapped around her like a truth too big to ignore. And for the first time in 20 years, she let the tears come, not because she was broken, but because she was healing. She realized letting go is not the end of ambition. It is the return to authenticity. Letting go isn't quitting. It's choosing wholeness over performance. It's no longer measuring your worth by exhaustion. It's refusing to betray yourself, to meet an expectation you never agreed to. We are taught to chase, to build, to grind, to climb, but no one teaches us how to stop, how to listen, how to soften without disappearing, how to allow without losing our fire. Maya learned a new kind of strength, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't dominate a room, the kind that whispers, "I trust myself now." She no longer filled her calendar to feel valuable. She no longer accepted invitations that drained her. She no longer clung to relationships built on image rather than intimacy. Instead, she started waking up before the sun just to hear the birds. She started dancing in her living room without music. She wrote letters she never sent. She forgave herself for everything she thought she had to be. One day, her son asked her, "Why are you smiling for no reason now?" She looked at him and said, "Because for the first time, I don't need a reason." Letting go didn't shrink her world. It expanded her soul. She re-entered the business world months later. But she came back different. She led with presence, not pressure. She created space in meetings for silence. She started her talks not with numbers, but with questions. Who are you when no one is watching? What would you do if you weren't afraid? Maya still worked hard, but now her work came from wholeness, not from a hole she was trying to fill. And that changed everything. If you've been carrying the belief that letting go means weakness, hear this. Letting go is how you return to the part of you that never needed to perform in the first place. It's how you rediscover the child who danced without mirrors, who laughed without filters, who rested without guilt. You don't need to hold it all. You just need to hold yourself. Practice this. Next time you feel the need to prove, pause, place your hand over your heart, breathe in, and whisper, "I am already enough." The world taught you to run, but your soul came here to remember, to be, to trust, to let go. Letting go doesn't mean you disappear. It means you finally come home. The silent trap of overthinking and how to escape. David didn't look like someone drowning. On the outside, everything seemed fine. He had a job in Midtown Manhattan that paid well, a tidy apartment on the 17th floor, and a wardrobe that never wrinkled. He was the kind of person who remembered your coffee order, texted back with full punctuation, and always said thank you, even when he didn't mean it. But inside, his mind never stopped. It was a loop, a tangle, a never-ending to-do list written in invisible ink. The kind of thoughts that don't scream, but hum constantly like static in the background. If worry had a voice, David lived with it. He worried about what he said yesterday, about what she meant by that pause in the conversation, about whether he locked the door even though he checked it twice. He worried about how to reply to a simple email without sounding cold, how to ask for help without sounding weak, how to make decisions without ruining everything. Every morning, he would wake up already tired, not from the day, but from the nights spent rehearsing and revising conversations that hadn't happened. One Friday evening, his friend Tyler invited him to a jazz bar downtown. Live music, candlelight, no dress code. David said yes, then changed his mind 3 times. What if he didn't know anyone there? What if he said something awkward? What if he got stuck in traffic? What if he wasn't fun enough? Interesting enough? Enough. He didn't go. Instead, he spent the evening alone, scrolling through text threads and wondering why he felt lonelier with each unread message. The next day, he Googled how to stop overthinking for the 13th time that month. But no article, no hack, no checklist could fix what David hadn't yet admitted. He wasn't addicted to thinking. He was afraid to feel. That's the silent trap of overthinking. It disguises itself as productivity, as responsibility, as caring. But beneath it is something deeper, fear. The fear that if we stop thinking, even for a second, the truth will come crashing in. So we stir the pond over and over, hoping for clarity, not realizing that the more we stir, the murkier it becomes. In Buddhism, there's a term, monkey mind. It describes the restless, jumping, reactive nature of thought. But the problem isn't that the mind jumps, it's that we follow it without question. We believe every thought that passes through us as if they were sacred, but they're just patterns, habits, echoes of old conditioning. David had lived in his head for so long that his body felt like a stranger. He couldn't remember the last time he breathed deeply on purpose, the last time he felt stillness without panic, the last time silence didn't scare him. Until one day, his therapist asked him a question that landed like a bell in the fog. When you're thinking, are you actually solving or just avoiding? That one question stopped him, because deep down he knew he wasn't solving. He was spinning, avoiding grief, avoiding uncertainty, avoiding himself. The mind is a master of illusion. It promises safety through strategy. But safety isn't the same as peace, and clarity doesn't come from more thought, it comes from presence. So David started practicing a new way, not fixing, not fighting, just noticing. He began with breath, not fancy meditations, just simple moments. Close the laptop, put the phone down, inhale slowly, feel the ribs expand. Exhale fully, let the tension go with it. At first, it felt pointless. But then something quiet began to emerge beneath the noise. A space, not a void, a presence. The part of him that didn't need answers to be okay. That didn't need to overanalyze his worth. That could feel the moment, raw and unedited, and not run from it. He started journaling, but not to solve anything. He just wrote whatever came. Fear, regret, longing, gratitude. It poured out like unclogged emotion. No judgment, no editing. And slowly the static began to fade, not all at once, not permanently, but enough to notice the difference between reacting and responding. He started catching himself mid-spiral. When his mind said, "You shouldn't have said that," he paused and replied with kindness. "Maybe I said what I needed to." When his mind said, "You're falling behind," he whispered back, "Behind whose clock?" When his mind said, "What if you fail?" he smiled and said, "Then I'll learn." Overthinking lost its grip, not because he shut his mind down, but because he stopped letting it be the only voice in the room. He began listening to his body. Hunger, tiredness, tension. He realized he often mistook anxiety for productivity, tension for focus. But real clarity feels calm. It doesn't rush. He gave himself permission to stop solving every feeling, to sit with discomfort, to let a question remain open without forcing an answer. Because that's what overthinking really is, a desperate attempt to fix what's meant to be felt. Try this the next time your mind races. Don't dive deeper, don't fight it, just label it. This is thinking, this is planning, this is fear, this is the past, this is not truth. This is a story, and then breathe. You are not the storm. You are the sky it moves through. Part 5. Caring without crushing. The difference between love and attachment. Layla was known for her heart. As a nurse in Austin, people called her an angel in scrubs, the kind of person who stayed after her shift to hold a patient's hand, the kind who remembered birthdays, who texted just to check in, who said I'm fine even when her bones ached from 12-hour days. But at night, when the world went quiet, she'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling with one question circling her chest like a whisper she couldn't push away. Why does caring so much feel like it's killing me? She didn't say it out loud, of course. Caring was her gift, her badge of honor, her reason for getting up, but it had also become her prison, her friendships one-sided, her relationship draining her family. Constantly leaning on her to fix things she didn't break. She said yes when she meant no. She stayed when she needed to leave. She gave and gave and gave until all she felt was empty. One evening, a colleague found her crying in the supply closet. She wasn't in crisis. She was in collapse, the slow kind, the kind that doesn't scream for help but quietly erodes everything you are. That night, Layla wrote in her journal something that would change her life. I don't want to stop caring, but I can't keep caring like this. She started asking different questions. What is love without sacrifice? What is help without burnout? What does it mean to give without losing yourself? Because what no one teaches us is this. There is a difference between love and attachment, between care and control, between being compassionate and being consumed. In Buddhism, there's a form of love called metta, loving kindness without clinging. It means wishing someone well, without trying to manage their journey, or make their pain your responsibility, or fix what they aren't ready to face. Layla realized she had mistaken control for care. She jumped in to rescue not because others couldn't swim, but because she was terrified of watching them struggle. She couldn't bear their discomfort, because somewhere deep inside, she had tied her worth to being needed. So she gave too much, stayed too long, worked too hard, all in the name of love. But real love breathes. It doesn't smother. It invites. It doesn't demand. It creates space. It doesn't consume it. One Sunday morning, sitting on her front porch, she wrote herself a letter. Dear Layla, you don't need to bleed to prove you have a heart. You don't need to be perfect to be worthy of love. You don't need to carry what isn't yours. And you are allowed to rest, to receive, to leave. That letter became her turning point. She didn't stop caring. She just stopped managing everyone's emotions. She started asking people, what do you need from me right now? And more importantly, she asked herself, what do I need right now? Sometimes the answer was silence. Sometimes space. Sometimes saying no even to people she loved. Especially to people she loved. Because love without boundaries isn't. It's survival. And she was done surviving. She was ready to live. She told her boyfriend, kindly, gently, that she couldn't keep being his therapist. That she needed a partner, not a patient. He didn't take it well. But that didn't change her truth. She started letting her mom solve her own problems, even when it felt cold. Because warmth isn't rescuing. It's respecting someone else's growth. She sat with her guilt, didn't run from it, let it pass through like weather, until one day, guilt turned into peace. Caring without crushing meant giving people back their power. It meant trusting that others could struggle without it being your fault. It meant realizing that saving someone from discomfort sometimes robs them of transformation. Try this. The next time you feel that pull to fix, to manage, to make everything okay, pause, breathe, ask, is this mine to carry? If it is, carry it with grace. If it isn't, set it down with love. That is compassion. With wisdom, Layla didn't become less loving. She became more powerful. She walked through her days with open hands instead of clenched fists. She listened without absorbing. She offered help without expectation. She gave not to prove her worth, but because she wanted to. From fullness, not emptiness. Now when someone cries in front of her, she doesn't panic. She doesn't try to fix. She just stays. Present, soft, safe. That is the essence of true care. And it changed everything. She found that her relationships deepened. Not because she did more, but because she did it from a place of alignment. Her presence no longer came with hidden strings. No more silent resentment. No more martyrdom masked as kindness. Just honesty. Just wholeness. So if you are someone who feels deeply, who carries more than your share, who says yes because saying no feels selfish, let this be your reminder. You are allowed to care without controlling, to love without losing yourself, to support without self-sacrifice. Your empathy is a gift, but it is not a contract to abandon yourself. Your tenderness is sacred, but it is not an excuse to tolerate chaos. The people who truly love you will not only accept your boundaries, they will respect them, because when you show up from wholeness, you invite others to do the same. Love is not about holding everything together. It's about holding space, even for yourself. Layla now walks lighter, not because her world changed, but because her relationship to it did. She still cares, but she no longer carries what's not hers. And in doing so, she has finally come home to herself. And maybe that's what love was always meant to do. Part 6. Who are you without applause? Reclaiming inner validation. Elijah had spent years chasing the sound of clapping. Not literal applause, but likes, comments, praise, performance reviews, the nods of strangers that felt like proof he existed. As a creator living in Lowe's Angels, the spotlight wasn't just part of his life. It was his life. Every post, every video, every perfectly edited story was curated not just for impact, but for approval. And for a while it worked. He grew a following, his inbox was full. His DMs were buzzing, brands noticed, people recognized him, validation felt endless until it didn't. One month a campaign flopped, then another. Then the algorithm changed. Overnight his engagement dropped. His audience stopped responding. No more fire emojis, no more "you're such an inspiration" comments, just silence. That silence was deafening. Not because it meant he failed, but because it exposed how fragile his self-worth had become. It had been built, brick by brick, on other people's voices. He sat alone in his apartment one night, scrolling through old videos of himself, trying to remember what it felt like to create before the attention. When it was just him and a camera and something real he wanted to say, that's when it hit him. He had forgotten who he was without applause. The need for validation is one of the deepest hungers of the human heart. And in a world wired for performance, we're taught to feed that hunger with achievement, aesthetics, attention. We confuse being seen with being known. But here's the truth no one tells you. When your self-worth depends on applause, you become a performer in your own life. You edit yourself to be palatable. You shrink your truth to fit the frame. You chase relevance like a drug that never quite hits the same high twice. Elijah realized he wasn't just afraid of failure. He was afraid of being invisible. Afraid that without the claps, the hearts, the numbers, he might not matter. and that fear had shaped every decision he made. So he asked himself the hardest question he had ever asked. If no one clapped, would I still do this? Would I still write, still speak, still dance, still paint, still teach, still love? If no one was watching, that question cracked him open. Because the honest answer was, I don't know. That moment wasn't defeat. It was awakening. He knew then that something had to change. Not his platform, not his audience, but his source. He began the work of coming home to himself, of separating praise from purpose, of replacing performance with presence. He took time off social media, not out of anger, but out of necessity. He needed to hear his own voice again, unfiltered, unfollowed, unapplauded. In the silence, something surprising happened. He didn't disappear. He returned. He started creating again, but not for the feed. For himself, journals, poems, unfinished songs, messy drafts no one would ever see. And for the first time in years, he felt alive again, not because someone told him he was, but because he remembered. He remembered the boy who made short films in his backyard, who wrote stories late into the night with no intention of sharing them, who once found joy in the act itself, not in the reaction. And that boy was still there, waiting. Let this be your reminder. You are not your audience. You are not your accolades. You are not your metrics. You are the one who creates, not the one who gets approved. You are the source, not the reflection. Try this. The next time you do something, ask yourself, would I still do this if no one noticed? And if the answer is yes, you've found your freedom. Validation is sweet, but alignment is sacred. And when you live from alignment, you don't need the world to clap, because your own soul is already singing. Elijah eventually returned to creating publicly, but now he does it differently. He doesn't chase trends. He doesn't post to be seen. He shares to connect. He creates from truth, not from hunger. And ironically, his audience grew deeper, not just in numbers, but in meanings, because people can feel the difference between someone performing to be liked and someone offering their truth without needing to be. So if you've been living for applause, if you feel exhausted from the chase, this is your invitation to stop. Not because applause is wrong, but because it's not who you are. You are the mountain, not the echo. You are the flame, not the reflection in the glass. And yes, you are enough, even in silence, even when no one says, good job, even when no one reposts your words, even when no one shows up. You, Lord, still enough. You are the applause you've been waiting for. And when you live from that place, everything, clarity, courage, creativity, finally begins to fall into place. Part 7, the whatever happens mindset, rooted peace in a chaotic world. Jessie always thought she'd grow old with someone, that there'd be anniversaries and shared bookshelves, weekend routines and morning coffee and quiet harmony. For most of her adult life, she imagined growing into those things with one person, Alex. They met in college, fell fast, laughed louder than most couples, survived a long-distance phase, cross-country moves, layoffs, and even losing a parent. She thought that was the hard part. She thought once they made it through that storm, the rest would be calm seas. But it was. It unraveled slowly. One silent dinner at a time, one I'm fine that wasn't, one missed moment where presence used to live. Until one day there was nothing left but a pair of keys on the counter and a note that read, I need space to find myself again. Jessie, now 50, sat alone in their Asheville home surrounded by memories that felt too loud and furniture that felt too still. She tried to make sense of it, replaying every conversation, every choice, every word she didn't say, and every fight she didn't start. Her heart ached for closure, for answers, for something that would fix the unbearable not knowing. But the answers didn't come. Instead, life offered her something quieter, a question. What if peace isn't when everything works out, but when you're no longer crushed when it does? At first, she hated that question. It felt unfair, like a spiritual bypass of her pain. But then she realized it wasn't about ignoring reality. It was about staying rooted in it, even when reality shifted. That's when she began exploring what she later called the whatever happens mindset. Not the passive kind of whatever that hides disappointment in sarcasm, but the grounded, mature, deeply spiritual whatever happens, I remain. It began with small experiments, like when the water heater broke and she had to shower cold. Instead of spiraling, she smiled and said this too. When the family group chat lit up with drama and blame, she didn't try to fix it. She simply texted, "I'm here if you need calm." It wasn't about indifference. It was about emotional resilience. When you let go of needing life to always cooperate with your plans, you free yourself from the tyranny of control. And that's where real peace begins. She stopped asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and started asking, "What strength is this inviting me to grow?" Because life will always offer chaos. Storms don't stop for anyone, but you can learn to become the mountain. She started a simple ritual every morning. Before checking her phone, before planning her day, she placed her hands on her chest and whispered, "Whatever today brings, I remain." That one sentence became her anchor. When work got messy, she remained. When an old friend ghosted her, she remained. When she saw Alex's name pop up on someone else's post, she remained. It didn't mean she didn't feel. It meant she let her emotions move without letting them define her. Emotional neutrality isn't the absence of feeling. It's the ability to witness your emotions without drowning in them. Try this. The next time something goes sideways, a plan fails, a person lets you down, a door closes, pause. Notice the reaction rising. Don't fight it, don't feed it, just breathe and ask, "Can I stay steady in this?" You'll be surprised at what happens when you choose presence over panic. Jessie started journaling every evening. Not about what went wrong, but about what she survived. Not as a victim, but as a witness to her own quiet power. Some days the wins were small. I didn't snap back when I was triggered. I cried without judging myself. I chose peace instead of the last word. Each page became a collection of evidence that she was no longer a hostage to life's conditions. One night, after a particularly heavy day, she wrote, "I am learning to sit in the storm without trying to stop the rain." That was her turning point. She realized the storms were never the problem. It was her resistance to them that caused suffering. So she stopped resisting, and life began flowing again. Jessie once thought peace would arrive when life settled down. But she came to understand that peace isn't something that visits when the world is quiet. It's something you build inside yourself, so you can carry it into the noise. One of her biggest lessons came during a weekend hiking trip. She had gone alone, not to prove anything, but because solitude no longer scared her. Midway through the trail, it started to rain. At first, she cursed herself for not checking the forecast. But instead of turning back, she kept walking. Raindrops ran down her face, and she stopped caring if her clothes got soaked. Something inside her had shifted. The rain wasn't an obstacle anymore. It was part of the moment. So she whispered it again. "Whatever happens, I remain." Later, she wrote in her journal, "The old me would have tried to outrun the storm, The new me lets it walk beside me. That's the essence of the whatever mindset. It doesn't mean you stop hoping. It means you stop requiring life to behave before you allow yourself to feel calm. It's emotional self-leadership, the ability to hold your center when everything else is moving. Jessie began practicing radical neutrality, not indifference, but calm observation. She used to react instantly. Now she paused before replying to a hurtful message, before taking a comment personally, before rushing to fix someone else's mood. She learned to ask herself, does this need a reaction or just my awareness? That one question saved her from countless spirals. It gave her power, because power doesn't come from control. It comes from clarity. One afternoon, she ran into Alex at a bookstore. The air shifted. Memories returned like a flood. He looked older, more tired. He smiled gently and said, "You look good, Jess." She didn't rehearse a response. She didn't over-explain her healing. She just smiled back and said, "Thank you. I hope you're well." And that was it. No closure. No dramatic goodbye. Just a calm ending to something she had already released. Walking away, she realized she didn't need his understanding to move on. She had her own, and that was enough. Peace isn't found in the resolution of all stories. It's found in your willingness to let the story stay open and still be okay. If you're reading this and you're waiting for things to make sense before you allow yourself to exhale, please hear this. You don't need perfect conditions to find peace. You just need permission, and only you can give it. Whatever happens, you remain. Try this. Next time life throws something unexpected, say it softly to yourself. In the car, in the elevators, in the kitchen after a long day. Whatever happens, I remain. Say it until your body believes you. Say it until your nervous system relaxes. Say it until you become the calm you used to beg the world to give you. Jessie didn't become invincible. She became available. To joy, to grief, to now. She stopped asking life to make her feel safe and started asking herself, how can I stay rooted when nothing is guaranteed? Because that is the question of a truly powerful life. Jessie began to understand that true peace isn't passive. It's fiercely intentional. It's built with small daily choices that say, I will not let the world dictate my inner state. This mindset didn't make her numb. It made her discerning. She still cried. She still got frustrated. But she no longer collapsed under the weight of disappointment. She let her emotions pass through, like weather, not like identity. That's when she discovered something powerful. The more she practiced neutral groundedness, the more energy she had for what truly mattered. When you stop spending your strength managing every possible outcome, you reclaim energy for presence, for creativity, for connection, for life. Jessie started volunteering at a local art program for teens. Not to fix anyone, but to witness them, to hold space, to let them know they weren't alone. One of the students, Ray, a 16-year-old with ocean eyes and hurricane pain, once asked her, "How do you not break when things go wrong?" Jessie paused, then knelt beside her and said, "I do break sometimes, but I don't disappear. I stay, and then I rebuild." That conversation stuck with Ray, but it changed Jessie too. She realized the whatever mindset isn't about denying emotion. It's about trusting yourself to feel without being destroyed. So many of us were never taught that. We were taught to fear sadness, to avoid uncertainty, to stay strong by staying hard. But the deeper wisdom is this. Resilience doesn't come from bracing yourself. It comes from trusting yourself. To fall, to feel, to rise again. That trust is what allows you to remain when everything else doesn't. Jessie created a mantra wall in her home. Simple reminders. Phrases like, "Not everything needs my reaction." "Silence is a response." "Let them go." "I am safe in my own breath." "Let it be messy and still meaningful." "I trust the unfolding." "I don't need to understand everything to move forward." These weren't affirmations for aesthetics. They were armor made of softness. They were her return point whenever the world pulled her away from herself. And slowly, peace stopped being a visitor. It became a companion. One day, Jessie received news that her company was downsizing. She had been there for over a decade. She wasn't just good at her job, she loved it. The thought of losing it made her stomach tight and her mind race. A year ago, she might have spiraled, replayed every decision, begged the universe for mercy, called 5 people to vent her panic, checked her email 20 times in an hour. But this time, she did something different. She closed her laptop, sat by the window, placed both hands over her heart, and said softly, "Whatever happens, I remain." She let the fear rise, didn't push it away, didn't pretend to be above it, but she didn't become it either. She allowed it to exist without giving it control, and that changed everything. The job didn't define her, her peace didn't live in a paycheck. Her identity didn't collapse with a title. She was still here, still breathing, still steady, still whole. That's the gift of this mindset. It doesn't stop the waves. It teaches you how to surf. When you stop expecting life to always go your way, you start flowing with it in a way that's far more powerful than control ever was. You become like the bamboo, bending with the wind, but never breaking. Jessie eventually moved on from the company, not with bitterness, but with grace. She launched her own small practice, offering mindfulness and emotional resilience coaching for women in transition. She didn't plan it, it unfolded. She didn't hustle for it, she aligned with it. Because when you stop gripping the world, your hands become open enough to receive something better. Jessie now lives with a soft kind of strength. The kind that doesn't need applause, the kind that doesn't fear chaos, the kind that meets change with curiosity. She still has hard days, but she doesn't run from them, she breathes through them. She grounds herself in one quiet truth. Whatever happens, I remain. And that truth, repeated over time, reshaped her entire life. If you've been clinging to plans, trying to script outcomes, waiting for the world to calm down before you can exhale, let this be your permission. You don't need perfect circumstances to feel peace. You just need to come back to the you that isn't moved by the storm. Try this. Stand still. Take one breath. Feel your feet on the floor. And whisper, "Whatever happens, I remain." Say it until your body knows it. Say it until your fear loosens. Say it until the noise quiets. And you remember, peace is not a place you go. It's a place you return to, inside yourself. Again, and again, and again. And when you live from that place, everything, finally, falls into place. Groundlessness, the sacred space between what was and what's next. Carlos had never felt more uncertain in his life. At 42, he had spent nearly 2 decades building a stable career in corporate finance. A corner office, health benefits, a team that respected him, a calendar always full. His life had structure, rhythm, predictability. Until the morning the email came. The company was restructuring. He was being let go. No warning, no second chance, just a folder of HR documents and a final paycheck. He packed up his things in silence, walked to his car, sat in the driver's seat for nearly an hour, staring out the windshield at nothing. That night, he stood in his kitchen in Seattle, holding a glass of wine in one hand and a question in the other. Who am I now? Not what's next, not how do I get back on track, just that one aching question. Who am I, now that the version of me I built is gone? That's what groundlessness feels like. The quiet terror of the in-between. Not quite who you were, not yet who you're becoming. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it looks like staring at a resume that no longer feels true. Or waking up and not recognizing the life you're living. Or watching a relationship fade and realizing love alone can't hold it together. Or being in a new city, a new phase, a new identity, without any idea of what comes next. Groundlessness is a spiritual free fall. You're not dying, but something inside you is dissolving. And that's sacred, even if it doesn't feel like it. Carlos spent the first few weeks trying to fix it. Update the resume. Apply for jobs he didn't even want, take courses, stay productive, stay busy, stay afloat. Because we're taught that stillness equals failure. That if we're not moving forward, we're falling behind. But what if the stillness isn't punishment? What if it's preparation? He stopped updating LinkedIn, stopped pretending everything was fine. He started going on long walks by Lake Washington with no headphones, just footsteps and sky. Sometimes tears came, sometimes peace. One day he sat on a bench overlooking the water, watching ducks glide across the surface with ease. He wrote in his journal, "They don't rush to the other side. They let the lake carry them. Maybe I can do the same." That was the moment something shifted. He didn't suddenly know the answers. He just stopped needing them so urgently. Because here's the truth. Transformation doesn't happen at the top of the mountain. It happens in the cocoon, the space between the old skin and the new one. The part of the story where the page is turning, but hasn't landed yet. Carlos remembered reading once that caterpillars don't become butterflies by simply growing wings. They dissolve into goo, completely formless, unrecognizable, and only then does the new form emerge. He realized that's what he was, liquid, unformed, but not lost. He began to trust that he didn't need to rush into his next chapter, that his not knowing wasn't laziness, it was sacred pause, that his grief over losing his job wasn't just about money. It was about identity and letting go of who he thought he had to be. He started asking different questions. Not what should I do next, but what is life trying to show me now? He started noticing the small things, the way the light shifted in his apartment in the early evening, how his body felt after a walk without distraction, the way conversations with strangers had begun to matter more. Groundlessness became less of a void and more of a gateway. And slowly, without trying to force it, something new began to emerge. Not a plan, but a presence, not a title, but a truth, that he was not his job, not his salary, not his productivity. He was the witness, the soul, the sky behind it all. He didn't rush to rebuild his old life. He chose to rewrite it. He took a part-time job at a local bookstore, not because it made sense, but because it made him feel human again. He enrolled in a storytelling course, started volunteering with a local mentorship program. And one day, while reading to a group of teens, he felt it again. The spark, the something more, the sense of yes, not because it was safe, but because it was true. Carlos may never return to the version of himself that wore suits and solved spreadsheets. But he had found something more valuable than certainty. He had found peace in the pause, and that kind of peace, You don't earn, you become. The wisdom of the moment, living without scripts. Ava didn't expect grief to feel like this. Not loud, not dramatic, but quiet, lingering, like a fog that wrapped itself around her mornings and made her tea taste like nothing. Her mother had passed 6 months ago. It wasn't sudden, but it still caught her unprepared. You're never ready, she'd learned. Not really. They had shared everything, Sunday walks in the Vermont woods, a love for stories, handwritten cards for no reason at all. Her mother had been her anchor. And now the silence left behind felt impossibly loud. Everyone told her to take her time, but the world keeps moving, doesn't it? The bills still come. The inbox still fills. The neighbors still wave politely as if everything is normal. But inside, Ava wasn't moving. She was stuck in what-ifs and should-haves, regretting the last phone call where she sounded distracted, replaying conversations that no longer had a reply. She tried everything to feel better. Routine. Meditation, self-help podcasts, nothing landed. Until one morning, barefoot in her backyard, holding a cup of coffee that had long gone cold, she noticed a single flower blooming at the edge of her fence. She didn't remember planting it. It was just there, and something in her softened. She kneeled down, watched it sway, watched the breeze move through its delicate petals, watched herself breathing for the first time that day without effort. That moment didn't fix her, but it reached her. In a way the books and lectures hadn't, because it was real. It wasn't theory, it wasn't planned, it was presence. That was the moment Ava began to understand. The healing wasn't in doing more. It was in noticing more. It wasn't in running forward. It was in returning to now. We're taught to plan everything, to script our days, to map our years, to ask what's next. But sometimes what we need most is to ask, what is here? Ava didn't rush into productivity. She let her healing be messy. She let it take strange shapes. She began spending mornings in the garden, not for the sake of growth, but for the practice of being. Each day, she paid attention to the smell of earth after rain, to the hum of bees, to the crackle of gravel beneath her boots. And in that space, without a schedule, without a script, something profound happened. She began to return to herself, not the version that was strong for everyone else, not the version that performed gratitude, but the one who felt things deeply, who didn't need to understand everything, to honor what was real. Ava used to believe her life needed a map. Every move had to make sense. Every feeling had to be explained. She clung to plans like armor, thinking that if she could just get everything right, she wouldn't get hurt again. But grief unraveled all of that. It showed her how little we control, how easily life cracks open our certainty and replaces it with silence, and how sometimes the greatest growth comes from putting down the pen and letting the story write itself. She remembered her mother once saying, "The most beautiful moments in life don't come from what we plan. They come from what we're brave enough to feel." Ava began to see that life didn't need her to manage every second. It needed her to enter every second fully, to stop treating the present as a means to an end, and to begin treating it as the end itself. That changed everything. Ava started a new practice. Every morning before she touched her phone, she'd sit on the porch with her coffee and whisper, "What is life asking of me right now?" Not, "What do I need to do today?" Or, "What should I fix?" But, "What is here? What needs my attention, not my anxiety? What needs my care, not my control?" Some days the answer was rest. Some days it was forgive. Other days it was call someone, say what you need to say. Let the moment be what it is. And through this gentle listening, She began healing in a way she hadn't expected. Not through logic, but through presence. She stopped needing to know what came next. She stopped performing wholeness, and she let the moment lead. And what she found, again and again, was that the moment knew the way. Ava's garden became her sanctuary. It taught her more than any book. That growth takes time. That decay is part of the process. That not everything blooms at once. That beauty lives in the unplanned. One morning, she noticed a monarch butterfly land on her knee. She didn't reach for her phone. She didn't try to hold it. She just watched it, and then she let it go. That moment, simple and fleeting, felt more real than any accomplishment she'd had in months. It reminded her, life isn't something you manage. It's something you meet. She began living slower, speaking softer, laughing easier, and people noticed, not because she did more, but because she was more present, more here, more honest, more alive. Ava eventually returned to her work as a therapist, but she brought a different energy. She didn't try to fix everyone's pain. She held space for it. She asked her clients, "Where are you right now? Not where you think you should be." She invited them to stop chasing answers, and instead, to start feeling the moment. Because when we stop demanding that life makes sense, we begin to see how much wisdom was always here, hidden in plain sight. And Ava learned to trust that wisdom, to let go of the illusion that peace comes from certainty, and to embrace the truth. That peace comes from presence. If you've ever felt like your life isn't unfolding fast enough, if you've questioned whether you're falling behind, if you've wondered what your purpose is, or why you're still waiting for clarity, pause, come back here, to this moment, to this breath, to this body, to this truth. You don't need to rush. You don't need to figure it all out. You don't need to perform progress. You are allowed to live without a script, to heal without a plan, to belong without proving. Let the moment lead you. It knows the way. Try this. Sit quietly and ask, what is life showing me right now? Let the answers rise slowly. Let them speak softly. Let them guide you, gently, fully, into the life that's been waiting for you to arrive. Because when you stop chasing moments and start entering them, everything begins to fall into place. The art of doing less, being more, becoming the calm with. When Sophia walked into the retreat center, she didn't know what she was searching for. She only knew she was tired. Tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. Not the kind of tired that comes from late nights or heavy lifting, but the soul tiredness that comes from constantly performing, proving, pushing. She had spent the last 20 years building a name for herself, first in academia, then in consulting, then as a coach. She was respected, successful, efficient. But when her father passed unexpectedly, the scaffolding of her life began to rattle. All the calendars, the systems, the goals suddenly felt hollow. She showed up for her clients with wisdom, but behind the scenes, she couldn't remember the last time she sat with her own grief or her own self, so she stepped away. 3 weeks in a quiet forest cabin in Oregon. No signal, no schedule, no one to impress. At first, the stillness unnerved her. She kept reaching for her phone out of habit, kept drafting mental to-do lists she would never complete. But one morning, wrapped in a blanket by the window, coffee in hand, she watched the fog roll over the pines and felt something break open inside her. Not in a way that hurt, in a way that healed. For the first time in what felt like forever, she realized she didn't have to do anything to be worthy of that moment. She didn't have to write a newsletter, craft a post, return an email, or measure the value of her time. She could just be. That moment changed her. She wrote in her journal, "All this time I thought I was chasing freedom, but really I was just avoiding stillness. We live in a culture obsessed with doing. More hours, more productivity, more hustle, more proving." But Sophia discovered what many quietly know in their hearts. Doing more doesn't always mean living more. Sometimes doing less is what brings us back to life. She started practicing what she called intentional stillness. Not laziness, not giving up, but the radical choice to slow down and listen. She noticed how much energy she spent trying to keep up with other people's lives, opinions, urgency, noise, and how rarely she asked herself, "What do I really want to say yes to?" She realized her calm was not a reward for finishing her checklist. It was her natural state, waiting beneath the chaos. And when she stopped overcommitting, over-explaining, overperforming, she began remembering who she was before she became what everyone expected. The art of doing less is the art of returning to who you really are. Without the titles, without the armors, without the noise. Sophia began to see her presence as her superpower. She no longer rushed her answers. She let silence breathe between sentences. She didn't respond immediately to every text or expectation. She created space inside herself so she could hold space for others. Her conversations deepened. Her relationships softened. Her creativity returned, not forced, but flowing. She didn't need to chase meaning. She became meaningful. And that's what doing less really gives you. Not emptiness, but expansion. When you stop filling every moment, you finally hear what your soul has been whispering all along. You don't need to be busier to be better. You don't need to be faster to be worthy. You don't need to be louder to be loved. You just need to be here. Fully, truly, gently. Sophia didn't go back to her old schedule. She reimagined everything. She built her days around breath, not pressure, around alignment, not algorithm, around peace, not performance. She taught her clients a new model of success, not built on visibility, but on vitality, not measured in numbers, but in presence. She helped them remember what they forgot in the chase, that the deepest impact comes not from what you do, but from who you are while you're doing it, and who you are when no one's watching, when there's no outcome, when there's nothing to prove, is more than enough. If you've made it this far, through the noise, through the pressure, through the weight of trying to be everything, take this moment. Let it land. You were never meant to do everything. You were meant to be you. Fully, gently, clearly. You don't need to achieve your way into peace. You can rest your way into truth. You don't need to conquer stillness. You can trust it. Try this. The next time the world asks you to hurry, choose to pause. Place your hand on your chest. And remember, you were born enough before you ever did a thing. This is your permission to stop striving and start being, to let go of the race and return to the rhythm of your own breath, to become the calm you've been searching for. Because when you finally stop chasing and you start trusting, everything begins to fall into place. Everything changed when she let go. A journey back to her true self. Sophia's story began like so many others, driven, ambitious, full of promise. She believed in hard work, in earning her place in the world, in crafting a life she could be proud of. From the outside, it looked like she had succeeded. A thriving coaching business, respect, stability, direction. She was admired for her clarity, her insight, her ability to always have the right words. But underneath the polished exterior, something deeper was unraveling. The version of herself she had carefully curated no longer felt like home. She smiled in public but questioned everything in private. And when her father passed, a quiet, sudden loss that split her world into before and after, something in her shattered. She tried at first to keep going, to rely on productivity as a way to cope, to bury the grief beneath checklists and calls and curated content. But the truth has a way of catching up. And one morning, when even her own reflection felt unfamiliar, she whispered the scariest words she had ever allowed herself to say. "I don't know who I am anymore." That whisper was the beginning of her return, not to the person she had been before, but to the self she had buried beneath years of expectation, ambition, and survival. She left not forever, but long enough to get quiet. She went to a forest cabin with nothing but a notebook, a backpack, and a grief she no longer wanted to run from. It was there in the silence that she first encountered herself again. Not the brand, not the role, not the titles, just Sophia. She realized that in all her doing, she had forgotten how to be. She had mastered the art of performing confidence, but hadn't touched the softness of her own heart in years. In that quiet place with no one watching, she cried. Not once, but often, not out of weakness, but release. The tears weren't a breakdown, they were a homecoming. She began to understand what all the ancient teachings tried to say in so many ways. Letting go isn't loss, it's freedom. And sometimes the things we fear surrendering are the very things weighing us down. Sophia's journey wasn't linear. There were days she wanted to return to her old ways, structure, certainty, control. But more and more she leaned into the unknown. She let grief teach her about love. She let stillness teach her about strength. She let her breath, not her calendar, guide her into each new day. She started asking new questions. Not what do I need to accomplish, but what is life asking of me right now? She slowed down, she rested, she listened. And in that slowing, a new Sophia emerged, one who didn't need to hustle for worth. One who didn't chase applause or followers. One who could sit in the discomfort of not knowing and find peace there. She returned to her coaching practice, but this time everything felt different. She didn't offer formulas or quick wins. She offered space, stillness, depth, truth. Her sessions weren't about doing more, they were about becoming more real. Her clients cried, they laughed. They felt seen in ways they hadn't in years because Sophia wasn't performing anymore. She was present, and presence, she discovered, is the most healing force of all. She no longer feared the pause, she honored it. She made room for the in-between, for the sacred space between what was and what's next. She stopped writing her life like a script and started living it like a prayer. Sophia's story teaches us something profound. That sometimes we must let everything fall apart so we can discover the life that was waiting underneath all along. It reminds us that peace doesn't come from perfection. It comes from permission to be exactly where we are, without judgment, without shame, without the need to impress anyone. It tells us that the calm we're searching for isn't out there, it's inside, waiting, quietly, always. Life lessons we can all apply. 1. Doing less doesn't mean you're failing. It might mean you're finally healing. We live in a world that worships productivity, but healing requires slowing down. Sophia taught us that doing less isn't laziness, it's presence, it's courage. And often it's the first step to reclaiming your life. Try this. The next time you feel the urge to fill every moment, pause, ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I stop? Then gently, kindly give yourself space anyway. You'll be surprised by what you discover in the stillness. 2, you don't need to have the answer right away. Sophia's grief unraveled all her plans, but it also opened her to something deeper. The wisdom of not knowing. It's okay to not have a 5-year plan. It's okay to feel lost. Often, what looks like a breakdown is actually a breakthrough in disguise. Try this. Instead of rushing to fix everything, sit with the question. Let it breathe. Trust that clarity will come, but maybe not on your timeline. And that's okay. 3. Letting go isn't giving up, it's growing up. Sophia let go of her brand, her ego, her need to prove, and in that letting go, she found herself. Letting go isn't about quitting, it's about shedding what no longer serves. It's about making space for what truly matters. What can you release today? An expectation, a grudge, a role that no longer fits. Start small. The lighter you travel, the farther you'll go. For the moment is enough. This one's simple, and also the hardest. Right here, right now, without changing a thing, you are enough. You don't need to earn peace, you only need to return to it. Take a breath, feel your body, place your hand on your chest and say, I'm here and that's enough. 5. You are the calm you've been looking for. In the end, Sophia didn't find peace in a cabin. She found it in herself. The world didn't get quieter. She became the calm, and so can you. It doesn't require a retreat. It only requires a willingness to meet yourself. As you are, where you are, with love. Dear listener, if you followed Sophia's journey across all 10 parts, thank you. You didn't just hear a story. You lived through a transformation. Maybe you saw yourself in her. Maybe you're standing at the edge of your own letting go. Maybe this is the moment where everything starts to fall into place. Not because you force it, but because you finally stop fighting yourself. Whatever brought you here, I hope you leave with more softness, more clarity, more permission to be exactly where you are. And if this story moved you, helped you breathe deeper, or made you feel a little less alone, I invite you to support this channel. Click subscribe, leave a comment with your favorite moment, share this with someone who needs it, because your support helps us continue creating stories that heal, reflect, and uplift. And we're just getting started. Let's keep walking this path together. One breath, one step, one sacred moment at a time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. And always remember, when you finally let go, everything truly begins to fall into place.